Thank you for joining Chainwork TV. It's Dr. Marvin Sublett here. I'm happy to introduce Nat Boiangin. He is a mental performance coach with a company called Mindtap here in the Miami area. He's been at it for about 7 years now. He has a background in music, working with musicians when it comes to mental performance, as well as hockey players. So today we want to get an idea of what he does and how he can benefit, particularly the realm of physical therapy. So Nat, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I love what you guys do, and I love the new collaboration we'll have in the future. So thank you for having me, everybody, and yeah.
All right, so let's just get it started now. So give us a little bit of background as to like what you do and what Mindtap is exactly.
Sure. So I am a mental performance coach. I have a background in master's and PhD in sport, exercise, and performance psychology. Okay. And our role is to help the athletes and really any type of performer be mentally prepared to succeed. All right. So we talk about the game being 90% mental and 10% physical. Well, how often do you work on that mental side versus the physical? Our job is to help you be in the right mindset to execute at a high level.
Okay. So give us some examples like of clientele that you work with at Mindtap.
Yeah. So we work with, like you said, hockey players, basketball, volleyball, tennis, really any type of athlete we work with. But what the nice thing is about sports psychology is that it's not just for sport population. It can be for lawyers. I've worked with a lawyer in terms of preparing them and coping with, the intensity of the job. We've worked with financial advisors in terms of, how do I make sure that when I make a decision that has somebody's money in line in the future, that it's the right decision. Musicians as well, like you mentioned, and just people coming back and wanting to be a little bit better in their daily lives. So our goal, yes, is to help the sport realm, but it's also to help improve quality of life.
Okay. So it seems like you work with anyone who has a high performance job or anyone who needs to, be on their in tip-top shape as far as mental performance.
Yeah. And, it's even high school kids. Right? And how do I get ready to take a final exam? How do I get ready to take the SATs, the LSAT if you're going for a lawyer, the GMAT? How do I make sure I can manage my time to be able to enjoy my life and succeed at all the different things I have going on? So, you can be 10 years old, you can be 80 years old and still utilize our services, whether you're an athlete or not.
Okay. And it's interesting. How do you usually find your clientele, or do they usually find you? Is it one of those things where people have issues with their performance and then they seek you out, or do you actively kind of promote your services that way for people?
So for us, it's a little bit of all of the above, because we have the stigma that, I don't need to see a mental performance coach because I don't have a problem. But you don't have to have a problem in order to work with us. So you just want to have the need to be 1% better than you were the day before. And really that's it. So, yes, we'll go to high schools, we'll go to different athletic events and try to advertise through there. But for the most part, people come to us, and really it's because they want to get better at what they're currently doing, whether they're not succeeding or whether they are succeeding. So we have quite a few clients that, don't have problems in the performance, but just want to be better.
You want to maximize their potential, basically.
Exactly. We want to get them to the optimal zone of performance so that when it's time for game day, they're ready to play.
What are some of like the important mental attributes that you think are necessary, or kind of like the things that you focus on the most when it comes to improving mental performance?
I think a lot of it is self-concept, how you see yourself as a human being. And that's one thing that I want everybody to understand, is that we are mental performance coaches, but we work with the human being first, because you guys are just human beings that happen to do different tasks in your lives. And if we can take care of the human side first, or the non-sport side, then that's going to translate into the sport realm or the rehabilitation process or the work field, wherever you're going. Right? And so self-concept is very important. How do you see yourself? Do you believe in what you're capable of doing? How's your self-talk? Almost every single client I work with, we focus on self-talk, because how you speak to yourself is very important. And, I follow something called a cognitive behavioral therapy model, where our thoughts affect our behaviors and vice versa. So, our actions depend on how we think. Do we approach a certain situation or avoid situations? Do we have a fixed mindset or growth mindset? And of course, what we want is that growth mindset, to not see things as challenges, but just obstacles that we can overcome.
Okay. It's interesting you mentioned that, the cognitive, well, it affects your behaviors, right? So tell me this, as far as you hear the words imagery thrown around a lot, goal setting thrown around a lot, how do you incorporate those concepts into your service?
So for us, it's trying to get an understanding of who I'm working with, who my client is, and their background. What have been their past experiences, and if they've tried some of these skills before. Now, goal setting is very important. It's a little bit cliche, and the reason why it's cliche is because it works, right? And what goal setting does, it kind of focuses you towards something. And it's one thing to have like a whole bunch of ideas and wants in your head, but once you write them down, verbalize them, share them, then you can kind of see the direction in which you want to go in. And this is especially important in the rehabilitation process because you're trying to strive for something, and it's going to be a hard process. How are you going to cope with that? How are you going to say to yourself, hey, I need to do these exercises, but I don't want to? What are you going to do to motivate yourself to do that? And goal setting is used as a motivational factor as well. Imagery is very important because what you're doing is you're taking past experiences and you're either reliving those experiences or recreating new experiences based on what you've kind of gone through in the past in order to overcome obstacles or to see, okay, where can I go a little bit better? Or how does it feel to do that? Because when you go through an imagery protocol, it's your neurons are still firing even though you're not moving. Right? So there have probably been times when you guys have been sleeping and all of a sudden you're falling down in a dream and you kind of move in bed, or your leg all of a sudden moves because in your mind you were imagining something like this. So your neurons are still firing. And if you have, for instance, an ankle injury, something we would do with a client is called healing imagery, where we kind of have them imagine the ankle being at 100% and what that feels like, and just moving it back and forth, trying to visualize the muscles involved so that when you transition into full range of motion in the physical realm, it's a little bit easier for your neurons to continue firing at a more efficient pace. So it's not like, oh, I have to catch up. It's, I've been practicing this. I've seen what it looks like before.
Okay. Interesting. As a clinician in the physical therapy realm, we focus predominantly on the physical, right? Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that you mentioned some of these mental components that can really help propel people forward. Talk about people's role or identity or their purpose, right? When they come into the clinic, they're hurt or they had a surgery, they don't have the same identity that they had prior, right? So how does that play a role in the rehab process?
It's a huge role, and really it's something that more the clinicians have to be aware of when they're working with these clients, because you have to understand when somebody comes into your office, they're no longer the same person they were the day before their surgery, and they're dealing with a lot that, some of them don't want to ask for help. They don't have that personality, but now they have to, and there's that internal struggle. And you as the clinician kind of need to be aware of this, because how you approach that person is going to be very important for their success in the rehabilitation process. Because now, if you think about an athlete who has some sort of ACL injury, they go for ACL surgery, they come into your office, in their mind, they're no longer that athlete because they're not playing, they're not practicing, they're not doing what they've been doing for the past 5, 6, 10 years. So that loss of identity plays a big factor during the rehabilitation process. So our role as mental performance consultants is to help them cope with going through the rehabilitation process, to see, okay, you're here, let's do something about it. Right? And something I do with every single client, even as a professor, which I'm a professor of sport, exercise, and performance psychology at the local university here, is I give every semester my laws of W. What is your purpose, or what is your why? Who are you, and where do you want to be? What type of person do you want to be? All right, and what's important is that first part is, what is your why? Why are you coming to rehab? Why are you in pain? Why are you sore? And then what happens is, when you wake up 5 a.m., when you wake up in the middle of the night, when you wake up sore and you can barely walk around, you have to remind yourself, this is why I'm going through rehab. Because, really, our attitudes are a choice. We either choose to have an unproductive attitude or a productive attitude. And it's the same with the rehab process. You have a choice to go through this process as efficiently as you can, or to just sit around and hope that you get better, by just doing the exercises when you only go into the clinic.
And it's interesting you say that. I mean, I've worked with athletes from, surgery all the way back to return to sport. And I think it's safe to say a lot of times that, they might have the range of motion, they have the range of motion back, they've gotten their strength back, they can do all the cutting and the agility stuff. But the biggest deficit a lot of times is the mental, and getting them back to where they were, back to the mental space they were prior, right? So I think that might even be the majority of the rehab process outside of the physical stuff.
Exactly, and we see it all the time, is you can be 100% healed, but when you're presented with the same situation in a game, you'll either see athletes kind of cower back or just freeze. And what happens is, you're now increasing the probability of re-injury. And you have to understand, as that person, am I at 100% physically and mentally, or just physically? Is this going to hurt my team, or kind of be a detriment to my team, or even to myself? Because if you're somebody, it doesn't matter how old you are. Your goal is to be able to live for as much as possible in your own way, with your own choices. So what are you doing now to kind of make sure that happens? And one phrase that I use over and over again are the decisions you make and the actions you take in line with what you want to achieve, right? You either want something or you don't. You can't kind of want it, because if you kind of want it, you're going to get those kind of results.
Right? Well said, well said. Do you feel like what's most rewarding for you? Working with the athletes, getting them back to the mental space they were in prior to injury, or just improving their mental performance, or working with the average Joe Schmo off the street that has a regular job, maybe a lawyer like you mentioned before?
To be honest, you're asking the wrong person, because I enjoy all of that, right? My passion is to get them to the point. We have a terrible business model, right? We want to get our athletes to the point, or our non-athletes, to the point where they no longer need us, when they can become aware of these own attributions, or, okay, this is a hurdle, but you know what? I have the coping mechanisms. I have the ability to overcome it. I have the ability to succeed. So, I can, if I see a 10-year-old do this, if I see an 80-year-old, whether they're an athlete or not, I still get excited. So that's really where I get my motivation to continue going, and to continue getting a diverse amount of clients. And doesn't matter if you're able-bodied or not. I still like to see the mental side there.
Yeah, so well said. Here at Chainwork, we're always looking for ways to improve the client experience, right? We want to separate ourselves from other rehab clinics and just performance facilities in general. What are a few take-homes you can give us and other clinicians that may be watching this video that they can implement, and consistently implement to see results in the future?
Yeah, so really the first and foremost is building that rapport, that working alliance with your clients. And, it's very important to understand that you're working with more than somebody who is injured. You're working more than that injury. You're working with a human being. So get to know who that is, because it's very important. If it's a personable space that they're coming into, a good environment, then they're more likely to adhere to the rehabilitation protocols. They're more likely to do the exercises, not just correctly in the clinic, but also at home. Because I think a lot of instances is that I hear clients, they come in and they're like, yeah, I'm going through the rehab process, but my trainer doesn't understand what I'm going through. I mean, I'm having all these issues at home that, I just feel like I don't have time. Well, you know what? As clinicians, as practitioners, we have a role to play in that area. Right? And I think I commend Chainworks and your staff on becoming aware of the mental side, and knowing that it's very important, because sometimes we're so stuck in our lane that we forget that we're working in a multi-dimensional world. Absolutely. Where one aspect affects the other. And we have to make sure we have this collaboration, which is, I think, one of the motivations why we're here right now filming this.
100%.
Right?
100%.
So, I mean, I went a little bit on a rant, but really that rapport is very important. The environment you set within your clinic is going to be very important for, the success or the probability of success of your client. So make sure that your staff understands, who are we treating or what are we treating, right? Because a lot of times we classify people as what's based on their injury rather than who, right? And that's going to be the very first step. And what I hope is you'll see many more videos in the future about specific topics that we can use to help you as a practitioner be there for your client. And really, the clients, if they're happy, they're more likely to adhere to the process. And I guess you guys have the same business model as us, that, you know what, we want to get them to a point where they no longer have to see us, right?
Absolutely. Awesome stuff. Now, I definitely appreciate you coming and dropping knowledge on us, dropping knowledge on the audience. We hope you guys learned a lot. Thank you once again. If you guys want to see any techniques or strategies that Nat uses and his partner at Mindtap as well. Who's your partner?
April Sikkim. She and I kind of co-founded Mindtap, and you can find us on Instagram at Mindtap_. You can see some links in the description. We're also going to upload some videos in the near future, so you can also see, okay, what type of environment are we creating for the rehabilitation process. We have different technologies that can enhance the process of your rehab protocol, and also make it a little bit more enjoyable for you. So you're not coming in to do work. You're coming in to work out, to have some fun, but also work on your rehabilitation at the same time.
Thanks, Nat. We definitely appreciate it.
Of course.
So we hope you guys learned something. As clinicians and PTs out there, consider implementing some mental performance techniques to help propel your clients forward and make the rehab experience a little more enjoyable, because a lot of times it can be tedious. And I think some of the techniques and strategies that Nat uses and his team at Mindtap that they use can help make that happen. So once again, thank you for joining us. You can find us in North Miami inside the DAP facility. And thanks for joining us once again.